The following presentation in this video are personal viewpoints of the speaker and do not reflect official policy or views of the Department of Defense or any of the U.S. military services. Welcome back to Shoot, Move, Communicate, where we provide training for military members to be fit for the fight in life, namely be physically, mentally, and spiritually prepared for the violence of combat and tackling obstacles in everyday life. I'm Chris Reardon, a U.S. Marine, and today we'll be covering the sixth of 6 videos regarding the physical and mental stress of combat that a warrior will likely face as relayed from LtCol Grossman's book, On Combat, of which the content in this video is heavily referred to either through quotes or paraphrases. Today we'll be discussing operating on autopilot in combat, disassociation, and memory effects. I look forward to joining you in on this important conversation. Research from World War II demonstrated that only 15 to 20% of individual riflemen fired shots in anger at an exposed combatant. If there was a leader ordering the killing, then almost everyone fired. Personnel manning a crew served weapon together also fired. But when left to their own devices, most combatants on both sides of the war could not kill. Military leaders in the US took this to heart, and 20 years later in Vietnam, there was an almost 95% firing rate. One of the key researchers in this area, Brigadier General S.L.A. Marshall, recommended to the military that an increase in firing rate could come about by having more realistic targets in training. During the World War II era, the soldiers were taught to fire bullseye targets instead of realistic human-looking silhouettes. However, during the Vietnam era, service members were taught to shoot at realistic silhouettes. You see, whatever that is trained on in peacetime comes on in war. Repetition of countless drills has come out during lethal situations when one isn't able to think. Now, this is a good thing, but it is critical to ensure that one is conducting proper training so that muscle memory of poor practices will not be repeated. For example, in past law enforcement training, officers are trained to holster their weapons after getting 2 shots off. However, in real situations where the combatant didn't go down after 2 shots, the officers found themselves facing an armed combatant right after holstering a weapon on autopilot. Today, police as well as military are taught to scan and assess after firing to train for situations when an enemy will not go down as quickly as you would like. Basically, the takeaway is to train like you fight because you want to fight like you train. One area in particular that it is important for one to consider in terms of muscle memory training is verbal commands that you will want to use in a tense situation. This is crucial because it has been shown that when an individual is in condition red, one's speaking ability, which is a fine motor skill, significantly deteriorates. To mitigate this, employ tactical breathing to get the heart rate down and thus mitigate vasoconstriction effects in this condition, which starts shutting down the larynx. In condition black, one can literally be scared speechless. Besides tactical breathing, you could rehearse simple verbal commands needed for disarming surrendering enemy personnel, handling detainees, or conducting immediate action drills when suddenly attacked. Other stress effects from lethal force encounters include intrusive thoughts, perseveration, dissociation, and memory loss. An example of an intrusive thought can be taken from one police officer who, involved in a deadly force encounter, thought that the firearm of the suspect he was dealing with looked just like his partner's. Others have thought about family members. The key is to use the thought to inspire you to act appropriately and refocus on the task at hand. This association can be thought of as an out-of-body experience. This is experienced in the sense that you are an observer role of the incident in which you're shooting. In a previous study, police officers we mentioned 40% experienced disassociation, 26% experienced distracting and intrusive thoughts. Now, 47% of this same study group experienced another phenomenon called basically perseveration and memory loss of their own actions. Essentially, what this equated to was after firing multiple rounds, they had no memory of firing more rounds, basically as the amount of rounds went up. Why this is important to note, especially for small unit leaders, is that once a firefight starts, it can be very easy for unit members to go overkill on ammunition expenditure, which could potentially allow a situation to get out of control where civilians or surrendering combatants can be shot and killed unnecessarily. Thus, you're going to want to watch for unit members stuck in this mode. Basically, they're stuck in that overdue loop over and over. Now, one way to mitigate this in training is to use stress inoculation techniques such as the use of paint bullets in a force-on-force situation to help unit members have a fear reduction of bullets being fired at them. Also, it will help account for actions taken in the heat of battle where no memory afterwards can be recalled. In fact, 51% of the police officers in the study had memory losses of different parts of lethal force encounter events. 21% of the same study even had memory distortions. An example may be that during a firefight, you were an A gunner assisting the machine gunner with sending rounds downrange. You all, out of a sudden, believe that your partner is hit and bleeding, although after the fact you realize that he really wasn't. Now, this is a possibility of happening, and if military personnel are aware of it, they could deal with it afterwards. Wounded personnel in particular have a propensity to hallucinate or imagine the worst possibilities that become reality in their own lives. Or I would say really in their own heads. If this is known ahead of time, those caring for wounded personnel or others badly affected by stress can empathize with them and do their best to reassure them of realities, not imaginations. In closing, the big takeaways here are that during the heat of battle, you will tend to operate on autopilot, so your training, for good or bad, will come out to assist or harm you. Thus, it is critical to facilitate and participate in as much realistic training as possible. We have seen this as critical when it comes to ensuring one's ability to speak under stress by practicing verbal commands. Lastly, various memory distortions and losses are likely to be experienced. If military leaders and individuals recognize this, they can better understand collectively what happened after the fact during a firefight. That being said, we hope that you join us in on future Shoot, Move, Communicate videos. Until then, remember, land at the free because of the brave.